Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. The Conservative leader came out in defense of the Alberta Premier today, accusing the media and the Trudeau government of demonizing Danielle Smith and the transgender policy proposals she unveiled last week. A set of rules that include the following: the prohibition of hormonal treatment for children 15 years of age and younger, the requirement for parental permission for hormone therapy for anyone who is 16 or 17, banning top and bottom surgery for anyone under 17, banning transgendered women from women's sports leagues, and requiring parental permission before any student younger than 15 may use a different name or pronoun from the one they had at birth. Take a listen to what we heard from Pierre Poilievre.
You notice that Trudeau has not given a single example of any of the policies that Premier Smith has brought forward that he individually disagrees with, because he doesn't want to be specific about it. And that's because he and you want to peddle in disinformation in order to demonize Premier Smith and parents. And Justin Trudeau has spread hatred against parents. He's accused Muslim parents of being hateful because they were standing up for their kids. He's attacked Christian parents. He has suggested that parents cannot be trusted with their kids, and I disagree with him. I think we have to trust parents. No one cares for their kids more than parents.
Well, to talk about this and the transgender proposals in Alberta, we're now joined by Naheed Nenshi, the former mayor of Calgary. Mr. Nenshi, thank you for joining us. Good to see you again.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So I do want to begin here with Pierre Poilievre. This argument that those who are being critical of the policy proposals are being anti-parent. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't spend a bunch of my time thinking about what Pierre Poilievre has to say about everything, but it is interesting. I wonder if the man blames Justin Trudeau when he runs out of milk for his cereal in the morning. When he was asked the question yesterday, he was clearly caught off guard and just yelled at the cameraman for asking him such an impertinent question. And then today he had some time to think about his notes. But what is ironic about the statement that he's made is he said that Justin Trudeau has not highlighted what in the policy he disagrees with. Well, Mr. Poilievre did not highlight what in the policy he agrees with. And if we can zoom in just on one thing, he says it's all about parental rights. Well, in fact, what this policy does is it removes the rights of parents. It says to parents who've been working with their children, who've been working with mental health and physical health professionals, that you can no longer approve the best standards of care for your own child. The government will tell you you cannot do that. And I'm referring to puberty blockers, for example, before the age of 16. They're not much use after the age of 16, so they've basically been banned. And, to Mr. Poilievre's point, certainly we all want a world where a child is supported by their family, by their teachers, by their doctors, by their community. But there's a lot of misinformation in what he is suggesting. So, I know he's often spoken about his sympathy for the LGBTQ community, the fact that he has gay family members. He might want to talk to those family members about their own coming out story and understand that everyone has to decide and be supported in who they tell and when. And the policy of the Alberta government is that schools will have to out children and tell their parents perhaps before the children are ready to tell their parents themselves. And every ounce of research that's been done on this shows that that is not good for the child's health. And in some cases, even Premier Smith has admitted, she calls it a rare handful of cases. But in fact, their studies show that there are significant amounts of cases. I've seen one study, and I don't have the stat for it, so I hesitate to say that it's absolute fact, but it talks about nearly 1/4 of trans kids are kicked out of home. And what Premier Smith has said is that in those rare handful of cases where there is abuse, then we'll deal with it via Child Protective Services after the abuse has happened. That's not good enough for kids. And I think Mr. Poilievre needs to understand that he can use as many cheap sound bites as he wants about parental rights, but this policy actually takes away parental rights and significantly has the potential to harm children. There is a much better way to move forward on this, if indeed we want to move forward on it at all, if indeed we think there's a problem that needs to be solved here.
Okay. I did speak with Danielle Smith yesterday, and she says by making these proposals, what she ultimately wants to do here is to make sure that anyone who pursues gender therapy is essentially getting the right supports, not rushing or being pressured into anything. And also, she does point out things like bumping up child protection. Do you not take any comfort in at least her motivation? Do you doubt her motivation here?
No, none whatsoever. Because if she thought that this was a significant problem that needed to be fixed, then she would consult with people in the community. She would talk to parents and teachers, and she would start a conversation with Albertans about it. Instead, on your show and on many other shows yesterday, she was directly asked the question, who did you consult with? And she couldn't answer it because she hasn't consulted with anyone. She's done this based on what she's seen on the internet, done this based on what activists are pushing her to do. So for example, I think most reasonable people would say, look, I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of irreversible surgery on someone before they're 18 or older. Well, here's the thing. No one in Canada has ever received bottom surgery under the age of 18 because we don't do that. And in very, very rare cases, after someone has been working with mental health professionals and always with parental consent, because you can't do anything unless you have a minor who is considered to be independent. You can't do any medical procedures on a kid without parental consent. All of that exists right now. And there are some rare cases, fewer than 20 in Alberta per year, where people do get top surgery, breast reduction surgery, but we don't know. There's no data on whether that's for gender reassignment or whether it's for cancer or any other issues that are occurring. But it affects a very small number of people. And the Premier knew exactly what she was doing by inserting this into the public debate. It's a distraction. It's a chance for her to get people fired up in her so-called base. But it's been done without any consultation at all. The one example that she raises, a tragic story of an Indigenous woman who feels that she made an error. Well, that person didn't start the process until they were 19. They had 2 years of psychiatric care and then had the surgery at 21. Maybe that was the wrong thing, but Premier Smith's proposals would do nothing for that situation.
And you mentioned the activists more than once being pressured by her base. For people outside of Alberta, why do you think, what's the motivation here for the Premier?
I hate to be cynical about this because I've known the Premier for 30 years. And in fact, I said on the weekend that a year ago, I was at a high school in Calgary and I was asked by a student who was presenting as non-binary, do I need to be scared to live here in Alberta? And I said, look, Danielle Smith is many, many things, but I've known her for 30 years. She's not a hater. She often talks about her own non-binary family member. She's not going to come after you and your friends. You can be safe here. And she did. And I don't, in my heart, believe that she wants to harm kids. I'm certain she does not. But I think she's done the political calculation and realized she's got a leadership review coming up. She's got people, right-wing activists who say they control her. Maybe she's scared that they do. Maybe she doesn't want to take a stand against them. But, if, for example, those right-wing activists said, we hate Muslim parents or we hate Jewish parents, she wouldn't act against them. But, she's done the calculation that this is a relatively small group. She feels like polls are on her side. She's going to be okay. And my argument to that is, look, polls don't decide human rights. Human rights are minority rights for a reason, and you can't do them based on public pressure.
I'm quickly running out of time here, but I have to ask you, because what you're saying right now, the passion with which you bring with it, you made an impassioned speech over the weekend in a protest against these policy proposals, and that is raising speculation about your own political future. Are you going to run for the provincial NDP leadership?
Well, I wish I could say, as some conspiracy theorists are saying, that, I planted that speech to start off a campaign. Sadly, I don't have that kind of control over Danielle Smith to be able to announce such a hateful policy just as politics are going on. The answer is, look, I haven't contemplated a return to politics. I've got a good life. But a lot of people have been calling, a lot of people have been asking, a lot of people have been saying, look, you're the right guy to to use a term, to take back Alberta from this government that doesn't represent us. So I know this sounds like a dodge, but it has the benefit of being true. I'm listening to a lot of pitches right now, and I'm going to take a few weeks to think about whether this makes sense, whether this is good for Alberta, and I'll probably have something to say at the end of the month or the beginning of March.
Okay, well, we'll call you. Until then, Naheed Nenshi, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.